Hello and welcome back to the St Mary's Field Museum on a day when we're very excited to be open to the public. You're going to be able to meet some of the public engagement team here, the archaeologists, and they're going to tell you a little bit about some of the artefacts that we've found that are on display here that we found from the excavation. And they're also going to talk to you a little bit about some of the courses that we've been running.
Public engagement is really important to archaeological projects, especially a project like this where we're inside a huge tent and people in the local area might not know exactly what's going on. The public local community can come in and learn a lot more about what we're doing here, the excavation of the site, things that we found, and also a little bit of history of the local area.
The museum, a lower level, has a lot of interpretation and interactive activities, including a fantastic skeleton table, which has cut out, hand-painted bones that have been a great way for us to talk about anatomy and skeletal remains without having any on show. On the upper level, it's really a great vantage point to view both the church and the churchyard that's encapsulated within this tent.
One of the really cool things that we've been doing is a series of courses and workshops which are certified by the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists. They're free courses for people in the local area to come in and learn about not just the archaeology of the site, but some different techniques of archaeological kind of recording of finds, surveying graffiti, different aspects of osteology. This is one of the pillar stones from the arcade of the south aisle, and you can see some graffiti on here which is from 1672, and we know that because the person who did it very helpfully carved that date into the wall, into the graffiti. And we also get their initials, so it's WP, and that's one of the most common sets of initials. Matthew Champion told us the third most common set of initials in early modern England. This stone is quite an interesting one. You'll notice it's not somebody's initials, it's a slightly weird mark. Now, it was suggested that it could be a sundial. They're very common to have a sundial carved into the wall of a church, and you would put a little stick in and it would show you the time, or a mass dial, so it would show you when you were to say particular prayers, sort of the matins and things. But you'll see that some of them are slightly different lengths, and it probably wouldn't really work as a sundial. So we think it could be some kind of ritual mark, which would be kind of protection and working very much with the power of the church. So the church building, the stone itself has a kind of power. When we looked at it in our workshop, we identified from measuring the different lines that they could be possibly two crosses.
So we found some wonderful things here in St Mary's and Stoke Mandeville, including these really rather beautiful jettons. They're not actually coins, they're a sort of pseudo-currency that was used in Northern European markets the end of the medieval period into the early modern, so in the sort of 1550s, the 1600s. And you can see the details that have been stamped into it really clearly. The words of it are actually the makers, the manufacturers of these jettons. And we know from other examples that they were made by very specific makers in Nuremberg in Germany that really had the monopoly of making these in the late medieval, early modern period. And this gives us a clue that actually this church might have been built here as an administrative centre for economic activity, agricultural activity, and that they were trading within a larger network across England and potentially across Europe.
The feedback that we've had from everybody who's visited has been overwhelmingly positive. They're really excited to see what we're doing, and they really, really enjoy talking to the archaeologists. They also, by far, love the little Lego model. So we have one here from Alice, age 8. I love the Lego sculpture and the facts.
When we started doing all the scale drawings of the walls as we exposed them, I took those scale drawings and scaled them down, and then a combination of that and historic photographs has allowed me to reconstruct both the floor plan and then the upstanding structure. The build was designed digitally and then the bricks purchased and, well, the finished article created. These pieces slide off here and here, and that allows you to see the recreation of the timbers that would have been used for the original roof's creation. And also down against this wall, there is the Brudnell monument, which was actually put in place by Mr. Brudnell as a dedication to his children who lost their lives earlier. And that has actually been moved to the new church of St Mary's, which is currently at the crossroads in Stoke Mandeville. As we open the model up, we can see a cross section of the church, or specifically the chancel part of the church, which you can see an example of a Victorian tomb which would have been brick lined and cut quite deep into the north part of the graveyard. Then the walls, which would have had stone makeup on the inside, and then a thin layer of rendering on each side to give the church the look that it has. And then as we come across, you can see inside, this was the location of the gravestone of Anne Jackson, who was with her husband, were important people and were buried in the floor of the church. On this back, the southern section of the church, we've created this cutaway so you can see what the sort of process is and how we excavate the church as it remains today. What we can see is a bit of a cross section of all the different activities that take place. We've got someone here with a shovel actually physically digging the spoil and stuff away from the walls. We've got a total station and a staff here. It's a piece of survey equipment that we use to take exact measurements about things we find. And then part of the job with this being a church and a churchyard is that we have to excavate the human remains. So here we have one of our osteologists in the red hard hat taking photos of a set of human remains that's been discovered in the churchyard.
This is a really special coin. It gives us a tantalising clue that the structure here might actually be pre-Norman. This is a coin of Ethelred the Unready, who reigned from the end of the 900s and into the early 1000s. It predates Norman occupation in 1066. It was found very close to some of the foundations on the western end of the church. And it gives us a clue that there might be Saxon remains beneath the church. If that's the case, what we might be finding in the next few weeks are post holes and stake holes from a timber structure, a timber church, possibly, that once stood on this site. It would be absolutely fantastic to extend the history, occupation, use of this site to pre-Norman conquest.